And you learn so much from pain, don't you?
You do. And the solutions thing, that's what's really powerful as well, is that sometimes, like especially in coaching, people are looking for solutions. And that's where, when it's fierce empathy, is
Yeah.
that we have to be willing simultaneously, when someone opens the door and says, yes, please tell me what I don't see. I want to be open. I want to be confronted. I want to be held accountable. Tell me what I'm not seeing. We owe it to them to speak the hard truth in love, and to understand that our
Warning, warning. As a medical doctor, I must inform you that there are side effects to this coaching session. Beware. It may enhance your self-esteem, cause you to experience vibrant health, encounter long-term weight loss, heal damaged relationships. Warning, there are side effects to this coaching session. It may increase your enthusiasm for life and bring about hope. It may cause you to have productive and optimistic thinking. It could even help you not allow messed up people to ruin the rest of your life, and help you realize the masterpiece that you are, and empower you to be the boss of your brain. Warning, these side effects may be long-term. This is Dr. Isabel from Doctoronamission.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MD and Chef Team Show. And today we have a very special guest, a wonderful man and a great friend, David Waldy. David, so great to see you today. How are you, sir?
Oh man, I am doing so good. It's great to be with y'all. I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Now, by just throwing in that y'all, we kind of figure that you're somewhere over in the East Coast, maybe a little southerly type area of the USA. Is that correct?
That's right. So I am Kansas born and bred, but I moved to Florida right before I turned 14, and then I've been in South Carolina for the last 14 years. And my wife, she is a Southern belle, and so just you stay around that for a decade or so, and you pick things up. I had a video we were talking about before this where instead of like turning on the water heater, I said cut on the water heater. It just comes out. That Southern just comes out.
Love it. We love it. We're from the East Coast, and
yeah,
we use those slangs sometimes.
Yeah.
Y'all.
Yeah, and since we now live in New Zealand, when that stuff comes out, we get a little bit like, huh? What did this guy say?
And it's so funny because our girls, who are very Kiwi, very, very New Zealand, with their slang, they say, Mom, Dad, you guys sound so American.
Well,
Well, that was our first language.
yeah, it's our first language. Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
David, you mind if we share a little bit about you and just kind of give it some bio and some history of who you are, and then we'll launch into the podcast? Is that all right with you?
Of course. Let's go. I'm excited.
All right, hon, you go ahead.
Great. Well, David is a life and business strategist, personal coach, speaker, and author, empowering entrepreneurs and leaders to get out of their own way. I love that.
Yeah.
And fix what's broken and never stop becoming the leader they said they would be. After nearly taking his own life and experiencing a divine wake-up call, David left his corporate career to reinvent himself, rebuild his family, and redefined what was possible in his personal and professional life. He now empowers leaders through his philosophy of fierce empathy, which we will definitely take a deep dive into, which enable us to look in the mirror, face the facts, which can be very confronting, and confront the challenges that hold us back from success, fulfillment, and aligned abundance. As a husband, father, and a Kansas farm boy at heart, David believes that lasting success is determined by integrity, responsibility, commitment, and accountability in not only our work, but in every moment we have. He has worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and leaders from over 40 different countries and shared stages with influencers like Tony Robbins, which is where we met you, and Russell Brunson. He is also an outdoorsman, coffee snob, personal growth junkie, and avid nonfiction reader. I love all of that. We so relate with so much of that, right?
Yeah, yes.
All right. Well, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, David, you said something in there about fierce empathy.
Yeah.
What is that? Can you please explain that to our listeners?
Absolutely. So fierce empathy is, you can call it a concept or a philosophy that came out of a lot of growth, a lot of pain, a lot of dark days, and a lot of really wrestling with circumstances and reality. And we all kind of get into this phase, and some people go through this phase their entire life, is that we are so resistant to everything that's around us that we start to adopt this belief that if we could just change out there, everything would be okay in here. If we could just fix our spouse, our kids, our job, our boss, our health, or whatever it is, we start looking at, politics, we look at the economy, we look at world events, we look at all sorts of different things. And what ends up happening is we live in this perpetual reactionary state, which I'm sure, as you guys know from the health and nutrition side, when you are living in a perpetual reactionary state, cortisol goes through the roof and you're perpetually stuck in a fight or flight modality. You're living on the defense and everything in life feels like it's happening to you. And one of our favorite phrases I know from Tony Robbins is, what if life's happening for you, not to you? And so fierce empathy came out of some of what I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. This really paradox of life is looking at, when you look at the words fierce and empathy, they're two words that almost seem opposite, right? They seem like, okay, fierce has this, ferocious, tenacious, kind of like almost violent characteristic to it, right? It's very aggressive. But then empathy, it usually has this feeling of more that soft, nurturing, that tenderness. And what I started to realize was that, and we definitely relate on this, is as I was going through some incredibly tough seasons, I started to realize that particularly the Jesus that I grew up with one modality, which was Jesus as the Lamb, which is more of what I would call the empathy side, right? We see his compassion, we see his care, we see his love, we see him stopping for the least of these. But it wasn't until probably my mid to late 20s where I started really diving into scripture for myself and starting to see this other part of Jesus that was just never there from what I'd been taught and what I'd learned in Bible school and all that fun stuff. And I started to see this part of Jesus that was like the lion, right? We hear the lion and the lamb. Those are two very, very, very different animals when we think about the characteristics. And what I had struggled with for most of my life was that I had just this, overabundance of empathy, which as a man growing up, I felt very insecure about. I was like, this is not a manly characteristic. I don't want to go around telling everybody my top strength is empathy. And I had to go through a process of really starting to understand that my definition of empathy was very shallow, very incomplete, very misunderstood. And I started trying to marry it with these two things I was seeing, not only characterized in the life of Jesus, but just in the events that we see today. We talk about, you've got pro-life and pro-choice. Here in America, we have the Democrats and Republicans. We have black versus white. We have, women versus men. And you start seeing across the world, it doesn't matter where you're at, there are groups that seem to be at odds with one another. And I started to really dive into this place of like, why is there such conflict? And the biggest reason, I believe, is because there's a lack of true empathy and trying to do everything we can within our power to see, hear, and understand from another person's perspective. So fierce empathy for me is this willingness to be fiercely committed, to let go of our ego, to let go of the pretense, to let go of our ideologies and our beliefs in a healthy enough way where we can open the door to create conversation and to explore the perspective of another person's life, how they see life. And so fierce empathy to me, kind of a simplistic definition, and it evolves depending on the context, is that being fiercely committed to do everything within our power to see, hear, and understand from another person's perspective, while simultaneously being willing to speak the hard truth in love as we see it. Meaning that we don't abandon what we believe. We still hold to what we believe. We carry what we believe, and we're strong in that. But we're willing to say, I understand that I see the world a certain way. I hold on to what I believe, but I'm not going to allow that to override this conversation in such a way that I can't create a context where you feel seen, heard, and understood, even if we disagree.
Right.
Yes, yes. Oh, I so get that, because that's exactly right in today's world. I mean, we've, as supposed mature adults, we've lost the art of conversation, discussion. You know, it's out the door. You know, if you disagree or I disagree, we just kind of go, you know, start hollering at each other, and, you know, the whole Twitter thing where everybody's going at each other and hating each other. And it's like, when did we lose this art of discussion? And as you say, fierce empathy, like, yes, I believe in what I say, but I'm open to have understanding and conversation and discussion with you to see where you're at and what makes you believe what you believe. And we don't even bother with that anymore. That is such a great definition. And I look forward to applying that also in our business, our coaching business, with health and wellness clients, you know, to understand where they're at.
It's really powerful when you take it even to everyday occurrences. One of the ways that I love to overlay fierce empathy is, have you ever been through, you know, you go to a restaurant? I think restaurants are a great example, and you order your food, right? And then the server brings your food out and it's the wrong order, or they forgot something, or whatever it is. And most people's tendency is to get irritated in that moment, right? It's like, this is the wrong thing. I've been waiting for my food. And oftentimes a lot of that is directed straight at the server. Like, that server should have known better, and what I found is, when you take just everyday examples like the restaurant, we tend to default towards negative stories. We make up in our head every single day, every single moment, stories about everything, right? And we tend to, as human beings, for whatever reason, I think that sin has a big part of it, we tend to assume the worst. We tend to assume the negative. We tend to make everything about us. And so in that moment, when your food is incorrect, instead of what goes through our head, I'll share kind of what typically goes through our head is like, you know, they weren't paying attention to me, or they were rushing, or whatever it is, they don't actually care about me. They're not going to get a good tip now, or the back, you know, the people in the back making the food, they didn't really care, or whatever it is. That's the default story, right? It's the same thing when we go through the drive-through at Starbucks and somebody orders 17 drinks in front of us, and we're like, who the heck needs 17 drinks? Come on, I got to get to work, right? We're defaulting to all these negative things instead of putting ourselves into their shoes and thinking what potential alternative story could be happening, right? And in the restaurant example,
it's the chef's fault, just so you know. Okay. Because that's just the way it is. It's always the chef's fault.
Always the chef's fault.
The chef was in a bad mood. He just threw the food and get out of here. Just wanted to let you know, as a waitress with a chef at one point in our life.
I am not even going to go anywhere down that rabbit hole.
But as you were saying, this poor waitress or waiter.
Yeah, what happens, what we don't realize is that, and this is equally as possible as whatever story we make up, is that when that waitress or waiter went back to pick up the food, they got a text message.
Oh.
And they just found out that their mom passed away. Or they walk back and there's somebody who's breaking down because they just found out something happened, right? Something traumatic, something. And so all of a sudden they're trying to like frenetically get stuff in the back, and they got to pull somebody off the line, and everybody's trying to, you as a customer don't see any of that. You have no idea. And because they're going to save face, they're going to come out, they're going to keep the show must go on. Right.
Right.
And so we internalize all these things, like even when we're waiting, you know, to pick up Starbucks or whatever, or when we're driving down the interstate and somebody cuts us off. Right. That's another great example. I've started to tell myself, I've started to catch and tell myself these stories of like, I'll catch the negative story, but what could be a potential alternative story? Because the fact of the matter is they're both irrational, but we tend to cling on to the one that makes us feel justified in whatever the situation is. So somebody cuts you off in traffic. Another quick example, the story I now tell myself is that person just got a phone call, or that is a husband taking his wife to the emergency room because she's about to have a baby. There's all these stories that we can make up if we choose to. And what ends up happening is that we start to see joy and peace and contentment flood back into our lives, because we're no longer playing this track that's just programmed into our head of negative, negative, negative. It's all about me. Life's against me, like all these problems, all these situations. And what you start to realize is that 99.99% of the time, it's a completely irrational story that we've just grabbed onto so that we can feel vindicated and being upset or frustrated, or nobody cares about me, or whatever. And so fierce empathy is something that when you practice it, it actually starts to kind of take over your life, and you start to like see colors you've never seen before. There's more vibrancy, there's more joy, like I said, and it's just a beautiful way that I found to live. I'm not perfect at it, I will say that.
No, we get you.
Yeah. But it's good. You know, you have just given me a definition of what I've been going through personally for a last 5 years, or a 5-year period, where God broke me down in areas of my life where these were the two words that I needed to come to. One was be humble and have humility, not be so proud. And the other one was judgment, to learn to be non-judgmental. And I've gone through that, and I've actually been practicing exactly what you've said, but I didn't have that type of definition. And it really gives me some clarity to understand, okay, what's been going on here? Why was I so broken down in these areas? Because I knew I was being put through the fire to get to be better Michael in society, so we could have another better person in society. And yes, that's
And a better leader too.
and a better leader, and coach in what areas we work in. And I know for me, you said it beautifully, that peace coming out the other side of that, just the stuff that happens to you daily, all of us, when these situations come up, to reframe it with a story that's more of a positive side, and just having humility and not being judgmental to what's going on to those people gives me so much more peace to say, okay, hey, this could be going on in their lives. Let's not just fly off the handle toward them, and let's have some.
I want to ask you a question too, because there's another use that I think anyone that's listening, and you guys as well, would find useful. Isabel, is Michael a fixer? Does he like to fix things? Like when you bring him stuff and you're just talking, does he always try and, or maybe he's grown out of this, but is he like many men who are just like, oh yeah, here's what you need to fix. Here's what you need to do. You need to do this and this and this and this. Has he ever been like that? Or is the roles flipped?
Actually, I'm the fixer.
You're the fixer. Awesome. All right.
Because I come from an alcoholic father family. And so I always wanted to fix everything, to keep everything under control. So I'm the fixer. Would you agree?
Okay.
Yeah, you're the fixer.
And you're the
I love it. Okay.
There's the fixer.
So, let me ask you a for instance.
I always wanted to get everything under control, and because
So
if you've
let
got
me
it
ask you-
fixed.
Let me ask you, for instance. So, Michael, has there ever been a time where you're just processing something with Isabel? You're not looking for solutions, but she immediately jumps into solution mode, and you're like, "Dude, calm down. I'm not like." Has that ever happened to you?
Let's see. What day is this? What hour is this? But I would say, we've been together 43 years, so we understand each other and we work through things. But probably the most difficult for Isabel in that area is we have 2 daughters. They're now in their 20s.
And I want to fix them.
Well, they're in their 20s. I can guarantee you they don't want to be fixed. They got their lives. They're amazing, amazing young women.
Yeah.
But they will let us know when they want some input. And
Yeah.
so, you know, as you know, being a parent, and now your children are younger, but as they go on further, you're going to, when you see the stuff, you see them heading toward a cliff and a mistake, you kind of want to grab it and fix it and say, I know how you don't go there, but you kind of get to a point where, you know, once they're gone and out there, you got to let them go and crash and burn at times. Yeah.
So the reason I bring this up is that it's really useful in all relationships, and it's also especially useful in coaching. There's a question that I like to ask, because a lot of times people will bring us issues or problems, right? I know you guys love to help people solve problems, and they say, well, you know, they might come up with all these excuses or justifications, or they say all these things, and your first instinct is like, well, just do this instead, right? Just here's how you fix the problem. Here's what the solution is. But the problem with that is that those of us that are wired, or even in a professional capacity, in a position to help people fix and solve problems, is what we do as entrepreneurs. That's what we do just in life in general, especially if you have, you know, high empathy and you want to take care of people. The problem with that is that the overwhelming majority of instances where people come and talk to you and share their problems, they're not actually looking for solutions, because they already know the solution. What they're looking for is to be seen, heard, and understood. So my favorite question to ask when someone brings me a problem, and this is where fierce empathy kind of kicks in a whole nother level, is, are you looking for support, or are you looking for solutions? Because the answer to that question will inform the very next thing that is said, or the very next thing that is done. For those of us like me, Isabel, I am exactly like you. I'm a fixer. If you bring me a problem, like I care about you, but I care more about solving the problem. So it's like, I don't want to hear about your whiny stuff. Like, just go do this thing and fix it, right? Like, like this is how you solve the problem. Can we get on with life, right? And what ends up happening is, even though the modality that we're operating in is we're trying to show care. We're like, I care about you. Like, just do this and fix the problem and you'll be good. Like, I want you happy. I want to be happy. We're good. Like, fix the problem, right? But the problem in that, again, is that a lot of times people aren't looking for solutions because they already know the solution, or they just need to verbally process with someone to come to a place where they can develop a solution for themselves. And so most people default to immediately chiming in their opinion or their advice or whatever it is, right? And in coaching, this is incredibly useful as well, because there was a point in time where I had a coach, a mentor of mine, where it was a very, very dark season for me. And it was one of the 3 times that I've really dealt with suicidal ideation in my life. And we ended up getting on a call, and he went straight into coaching mode. When I had said on the front end, I said, hey, I don't need solutions. I'm good. I know exactly what I need to do. I've got the support around me. I'm talking to my pastor. I'm talking with my wife. Like, everything's okay. But I do need support. I need to know that I have brothers for me as a man. Like, I believe in that, and women for sisters. I just need to know that I'm not carrying this alone. And I need to know that you're standing with me. I don't need you to tell me anything. I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to hold space for me. Mm-hmm. Well, that didn't happen. We got on a call, and he immediately went into solution mode. Like, where are you messing up? Where are you dropping the ball? What's wrong? That all this stuff, right? And trying to give me, it's like, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And it hurt, because I had specifically tried to, on the front end, say, I don't need solutions from you. I don't need you to tell me what I'm doing wrong. I know everything I'm doing wrong. I don't need you to tell me what I need to do to fix this or to change or whatever. What I need is just be like, brother, I hear you. I'm with you. I love you. I needed someone to remind me of the things that I wanted to believe in that moment. That we all have these times where we forget what God has said about us. Sometimes we accept it, but sometimes we that slips out from us and we forget. I just needed someone to remind me, like, this is who the Father says that you are. Not these stories in your head, not these thoughts that you're having, not all the feelings and the emotions and all the stuff. And that was a powerful lesson for me, being on the receiving end of someone who was trying to help, but actually caused more pain, caused more frustration, because with everything he was saying, He was simply reinforcing the negative story that was already going through my head of feeling like a failure, because that's just like, where are you failing? Where are you messing up? What are you doing wrong? Like what, all the stuff, right? And so I say that because when we're working with people, people are beautiful, complex, nuanced individuals, every one of them. Right?
Yeah.
They're also knuckleheads. We all are. And when you ask that question up front, what it does is it doesn't assume what the other person really needs in that moment. Because if we deploy fierce empathy and we say, if I was this person, right? That's one side of empathy, is saying, if I was this person, what would I say? What would I do? What would I think? That's how a lot of people see empathy. But a layer deeper, the fierce empathy is not saying, what would I do in that situation? Because you're still inserting your ego. You're still inserting yourself into their shoes.
Right.
It's saying, if I remove all of who I am and I can do everything within my power to think about their background and their upbringing and what I know about them and what they've shared with me, if I was them, right? Not if I was in their shoes, if I was them, what would they need in this moment? And that's really hard to assume because we have limited information about every person. So this question completely clears the table. And it says, are you looking for support or are you looking for solutions? And I have found the overwhelming majority of times that when you ask that question, they'll either say support or they'll say probably a little bit of both.
Yes.
Very rarely do people say, I just want solutions. Very rarely do people just say, like, tell me what to do to fix it, because people are brilliant. People know what they need to do. We just lie to ourselves and we get in our own way, right? And that's why a lot of what I try and do in the work that I do is help people to change these stories so that they can fix what's broken, because I don't believe there's a single broken person on this planet. I think we have brokenness inside of us,
Yes.
but I don't think we're intrinsically, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of people going around like, we're broken, I'm broken, I'm broken. And when you tell yourself that story over and over and over again, you're going to live believing that about yourself in every part of your life. So when I have these conversations, it's about saying, okay, support or solutions. Most people either say, I'm just looking for support. I need a shoulder. I need somebody to cry with. I need somebody to sit with me for 15 minutes and just listen to me, like be super petty or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so, am I making sense? I
Oh,
hopefully.
Yeah.
I just want to interject because we were just with our coach last Friday, and I don't know if you heard, but we had a major cyclone here in New Zealand, and
I don't
I
know.
mean, I'm still in.
I don't watch the news. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, we don't either, but we were in it, and
Yeah.
and we're just, I mean, a cyclone of grand proportion. It's just really ugly,
Yeah.
the devastation. So at the end of the cyclone, we got together with our business coach, and it was an hour-long conversation, and really 50 minutes was Michael and I just unloading, and she really picked up on it. Like we just needed to be heard. We just needed to be supported through. And she helped us, at the end, she said, okay, now this is your homework, because she's a lot like me. I'm like, come on, let's get going.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, here's your homework, because we're preparing for a TED Talk. She goes, this is what I want you to do. And it was just, David, it's exactly what you're talking about. We felt like that was one of the best coaching sessions we've ever had, because we were in such need of being heard by a Christian sister, who like we have been so saved, our whole family has been so saved, and we just wanted to share that with her. And so we get what you're talking about more so now, that because we just experienced that whole, what you're talking about, and the love that we experienced, the peace, the joy, the kindness. However, we've been on the other side like you, where people are like, this is what you need to do because you're messing up, and you learn so much from pain, don't you?
You do. And the solutions thing, that's what's really powerful as well, is that sometimes, like, especially in coaching, people are looking for solutions. And that's where, when it's fierce empathy, is that we have to be willing simultaneously, when someone opens the door and says, yes, please tell me what I don't see. I want to be open. I want to be confronted. I want to be held accountable. Tell me what I'm not seeing. We owe it to them to speak the hard truth in love and to understand that our number one responsibility to that person is to be completely honest, because chances are no one else is.
Yes.
And when we speak the hard truth in love, the fear that comes up for many people is, I don't want to jeopardize this relationship. We end up caring so much about the relationship that we actually lie to people. Even when they say, I need someone to tell me what they see from the outside looking in, because no one else has it. No one else is telling or asking me these questions. And so when people are looking for solutions, I always go back to the scripture that says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. How I see it when people are dealing with these issues or dealing with struggles or problems, whether it's in their relationship or in their business or in their health, is when we ask that question, are you just looking for support or solutions? Because you guys know coaching is very much solution oriented, but a lot of times there is that support component as well. Is that how I see it is this, is imagine like you've been in battle, right? And you got a cut, and it's a deep one. It's like super deep, but you kept fighting and going through. That's like a lot of entrepreneurs, right? It's like you're in the battle, right? But over time, right, that thing got infected. And it's trying to heal, but it's just infected, and there's pus coming out, and it's like, it's gnarly, right? Where solutions come in is saying, my friend, you grab their arm and say, I love you, but in order for this to be healed, in order for this to be fixed, to be restored, for you to be like the wholehearted version of yourself, I am going to have to cause you temporary pain. Because I have to cut into this now to get out the poison, to get out the pus, to get out all of the infection that's in there, so that we can sew you up and you can heal. But understand, in order for me to do that, you're not going to like me for a little while, because I'm going to be causing you pain. And that's one thing I think that most people don't understand, is this only works in the context of safety, accountability, and vulnerability. We can't go around to random people and say, hey, you're bleeding. Hey, let me sew you up. That doesn't work, right? We can't hold people accountable unless we have the depth of relationship. But if I'm looking at you, Michael, or you, Isabel, and you come to me and you say, hey, I've got this cut. I can't figure it out. I've tried to stitch it myself. I've tried to get it out. I need someone else to perform surgery. You and I both know I have to hurt you, but it's not because I'm trying to harm you. I have to hurt you because I'm trying to help you heal. And that's where I believe that scripture, it says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, is so incredibly powerful in a coaching dynamic, because we need those people that will use the sword of the spirit to separate, right? To cut into the flesh, but not because they're trying to harm us. It's because they're trying to bring us back into alignment, back into truth, back into the reality that is ours, especially as sons and daughters of God.
You got my mind, just the wheels are spinning, I'm thinking, yes, okay, yeah. I was writing while you were talking.
And you're
well,
absolutely
fortunately, this
right.
is recorded, right?
Yeah,
I know. I
That's
couldn't
the good
help
thing.
it though. I couldn't help it.
And that's the beauty of this. You got to have that depth of relationship to say,
You
okay,
do.
now, do you want this fixed? Do you want me to open this wound up and clean it out and help you repair? Yeah.
Because
And I
I've
love
realized that. Oh, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I love the point you made. You just can't go out trying to offer solutions to people all over the place, because, the number one thing, or you said of 3 steps, is safety. I mean, first off, people have to have feel safe that, yes, they can expose themselves to you, so they can have those solutions and that fix. But until you get to that safety point, until they get to the safety point with you, don't run around trying to just like, oh, I see this, oh, I can help you, all this kind of stuff, when
it's dangerous.
They're not safe yet.
It's dangerous. And we've seen this at, if you take the macro view and you just look at history, this is what has happened in New Zealand, Australia, the United States, all over the world, is that there were people who operated from a place of pretense, thinking that their life was better than another culture's. And so they insert themselves into another culture saying, we're going to help you, even though you don't think you need help. And we're going to help advance your quote unquote, advance your civilization to make things better for you because we think our lives are better than yours. And so you see this played out in Native American history. You see this played out in Aboriginal history. You see that, like, I'm using those two just for the context of what we have here. And what breaks my heart is that we operate from such a place of ego and pretense, thinking that we've got some stuff figured out. Now it's our job to go fix everybody else. And that is, I do not believe that. I live now from this place that says, I don't really care what anybody else does anymore. I care about my responsibility in my business, which is God's business, and my family. And my job is to love and to serve and to encourage and to build up. And if I think someone might need help, I have to have the courage to ask them and say, hey, do you need help? Right? And give them permission to say yes or no, right? But to automatically assume that someone is in need. Now, this breaks down a little bit because obviously if somebody's on the side of the road and you can sometimes tell when people are in need, but it's being careful to not insert ourselves into situations because we think that we're better off than someone else, or we're smarter than them, or we're more informed than them, or more knowledgeable than them. And this is one of the breakdowns in culture today is everyone's barking. Everyone's shouting. This is the best way. This is how you're supposed to be successful. This is how you live fulfilled. This is how you do all the stuff. The problem with it is that every single person on the planet defines success differently. There is not a single human being on this planet that defines success the same. And the people that do tend to have similarities in their definitions of success, typically they just adopted and stole it from someone else. They don't really know who they are or what they want. They say, oh, if I can just have this and this and this and this and this, they don't even, many of them, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart, they don't even know who they are. And they're chasing these things, thinking it's going to bring something to them. They're trying to heal from the outside in rather than the inside out. And we end up dealing with a culture like you talked about Twitter earlier, where everyone's trying to tell everybody the best way to do things instead of just saying, if what you're doing is not working, I have an idea that worked really well for me. Feel free to try it. I'd have you consider trying this, but I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to do it unless you come to me and say, David, will you tell me what to do and how to do it? Then of course I will. But until that time comes, which requires relationship and depth and intimacy and connection, until that time comes, my job is simply to love people. And if people are doing stupid stuff that's causing them pain and difficulty and challenges, I can absolutely go to them and say, hey, you've told me a number of times that you're struggling in your relationship with your wife. I know it's not my place, but I just want you to know if you ever want to hear things that I've tried or that have worked for me, that have helped my relationship with my wife almost 10 years. We're the best of friends. We've got an intimate relationship, beautiful kiddos. I'd love to share that with you, but I don't want to insert myself in stuff that's not my business. That's very different than being like, yo, you're screwing up your relationship. Why don't you follow me and do what I do? Which is what I see from a lot of the talking heads and influencers and gurus in the online space is like, well, you got this problem, just come be like me and all your problems will be solved. And there is a major, major issue with that because every person defines success differently. Everyone has differences when it comes to fulfillment and what fulfills them. And so I think we have to be very careful when we are deploying fierce empathy. We have to remember that the foundation is trust. And if there is no trust, which is what most of social media and politics and religion and economic, all of it, there's a huge lack of trust. And all these people are demanding that we become like them in order to have those results when it's not necessary. And it's also not healthy. And I think it's messing up a lot of people, and it's causing a lot of people to not live lives of purpose, intention, peace, joy, and fulfillment.
For those who are audio and not video, I'm putting my hand up to that last part there about basically following people that said, okay, you were messed up and I got your answer. And this is how you're going to succeed. And Isabel and I both, as newbie entrepreneurs, went through that process in the early part. and just blindly did whatever was told and didn't think about, did that align with what we were trying to achieve? And
Very
just
frustrating.
kept going, and then popped our heads up years later and said, well, nothing's happened. And if anything, we've gone backwards. And
Me
like,
too.
what's
I
happened
get
here?
it. I
You
get
know?
it, because I think we don't, there's a lot of times, and as you guys know, I mean, we've probably been through similar period of starting in entrepreneurship. When you're early stage, you don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to figure stuff out. And then you look at all these people that are winning, you're like, oh, I must have to do it like them. And I got to go
Right.
create all this stuff. And I got to do this and this and this and this and this. But I think the breakdown that we experience in modeling success, or modeling the behavior of people that we want to emulate, there's two things there. Number one is that we're not trying to model what they believe or what they think or how they act. We're trying to model what they do. And if you simply try and model what someone does without understanding what they believe, why they're doing it, and how they think, you will never get the same results ever. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to model what they do. And this is why so often people end up feeling frustrated and feeling like, what the heck, I'm further behind than I was before. So I can attest to everything that you guys just said. And I know I've been guilty of some of this as well in the past too. And I pray that Lord will keep me from ever going down that road again. But the other side of the token is that oftentimes we create this gap between who we are and who they are, thinking that they have something that we don't.
Right.
Which means that there's
Right.
naturally a superiority complex or
Mm.
an inferiority complex we start to adopt, because we think they're intrinsically superior, that they're somehow better, they're somehow smarter, they're better looking, they have all these advantages or whatever it is. And so then we actually start to operate from lack and scarcity. And we eliminate, or we remove ourselves from an abundant mindset that says, no, I know who I am. I know what I've been called to be. I know who my Father says that I am. This is who I want to become. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at different people. Who's got the 60-year marriage? Who's got a really healthy body? Who's an incredible parent? Who's an incredible, spiritual leader? Who's a person who's really financially successful? And you start looking at these different individuals, and yes, you can learn from them. Yes, you should get them as mentors and model them in every area that you want to grow in. But it's recognizing that they're not intrinsically superior because they're winning in a particular metric relative to yourself. You might be the best parent on the planet and be sucking financially, and you'll look at someone winning financially who's a horrible parent and think that they're better than you. And that's one of the damaging things that I see in culture and society, is that we wipe the slate of the 99 things that we're doing well, and we focus on the 1, 2, 3 things that we're not good at. And then we focus on the people that are really good at those things. And then we feel somehow deficient, and we feel like a failure, or we're not worthy, or we're not good enough, or they know some secret, or whatever it is. And we start feeling inferior. And when you operate from that place of inferiority, it steals your confidence. You're not going to show up in the way that you want to show up, because you're comparing to them and effectively idolizing them in an unhealthy way. You've put them onto a pedestal, and I feel like it's very, very damaging. And it's only been the past couple of years where I realized I've done that most of my life, and it doesn't work.
Hey, I have a
Are you
confession.
putting your hand up
Yeah, I
too
just
for,
want to say, I started to feel like that when I was introducing you, like, oh my gosh, and he did this and he's done that. I'm like, and then God had to like go, girl, you're mine. He's here with you to speak into you. So I've got you two together, all three of you together. Remember, 3 is the Trinity. So come on, we're all here together. So the devil is a liar. He always will be. And he will jump into our brains and tell us these stupid things while I'm reading this beautiful story about you and how you've been an overcomer. And I'm like, and God was like, you're an overcomer too. So I just want to say it happens to all of us. And I'm the first to share, failures, because our failures help other people get strong. Like, we're all just doing the best. And so I just wanted to raise my hand about that. And then I also wanted to say, so I loved what you were saying about, I want a little bit of that, and I want this, is, like, you're a puzzle. And that's what I've come to realize, babe and David, is that I like see all these things in people that I want in my life. And I'm like, all right, I'm putting this together, and this is the way I want our financial abundance, being like Jesus, all that stuff, being able to speak and encourage and empower people. And instead of, I've got to do it this way, and this is the way, and we're going to do it and do it and do it and do it. And it's still not working, but I'm going to do it. And we're going to do it. So that's what I've learned from this whole thing is ask God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to do this?
I have a great example that I'd love to share with you guys.
Yes, please.
Please.
If you imagine, because a puzzle I think is a great example as well, but imagine, those, and my kids love playing with them, those building blocks that are all different colors and different shapes and stuff, and they all like the Legos. They're kind of like Legos, oversized Legos, right? So when we talk about this thing around who we want to become, that's a big, like my tagline is never stop becoming, is that I believe at the core of my being that when we give ourselves permission to define who we want to become, what we need to do gets crystal clear. And so most people have it backwards. They're asking the question, what do I need to do to fix this? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? It's not that that's not a good question. It's just the wrong first question. The first question is, who do I want to become? And that only comes, I believe, through surrender and alignment with what the Father has spoken over us as his sons and daughters. And outside of that, it's an incomplete picture. And most of us, right, when we were born, this is the example. We were given this box full of all sorts of different shapes and sizes of colors of Legos, right? And we're born, and all of a sudden the box tips over and all these pieces are on the floor, right? And from the moment that we come out of our mother's womb, every single day we've been constructing, we've been assembling ourselves, our life. Now, as we're kids and we age and we mature and everything like that, we started seeing other people and their Legos and what they were constructing and building. And so what we naturally started to do, same with our parents and pastors and upbringing, we started to want to be like them, right? So we look at theirs like, hey, they have that. Okay, I'm going to put my piece right here just like that too, because I want to look like that. And what ends up happening is that if you're constantly trying just to be like everyone else, you will construct something and then you will wake up one day and say, I don't know who I am. Which is where most people get to at some point in their life. Quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people get to this point where like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my purpose in life is. I don't even know what to do. And that was the point that I had come to. And this visualization, this example came to me one day in prayer. And it was around this concept of being broken. I was like, God, I feel broken. I don't know who I am. Something inside of me's got to be broken. And the problem with this is like, but I know I'm saved. Like I've accepted Jesus. I love him with everything in me. So what the heck is wrong? Right? Why am I why am I dealing with suicidal ideation? Why am I constantly full of anxiety? Why am I battling depression? Why do I want to put a 9mm in my brain? What is going on? I'm confused. And this picture came. And I saw it, and I have lots of visions, and I love visions. They're so incredibly powerful. But I saw this, and what I felt like the Lord said in that moment is like, buddy, you're not broken. Look over on the floor. And so I could see this structure I'd assembled, which was me. And I look on the floor, and there's like still a gajillion pieces on the floor. And he said, buddy, this is not about something inside of you being broken that needs to be fixed. This is a deconstruction process and a reconstruction process. You need to take a look at your life and find out, okay, why did I put this here? Where did this come from? And you go and start doing this internal work, and you start to disassemble and reassemble in alignment with who you want to become. And the problem is, just like with a puzzle or with like Legos, if you don't have a legend, right, the box to look at or instructions, right, you have no idea what you're creating. You're just like, well, this might go here and this might go here. And that's how life is, right? Maybe this relationship plugs in here and this job goes here and maybe getting this degree goes here or whatever. And we're doing all these things. And when you can come to a point where you just stop and you say, whoa, 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 maybe I'm not broken, but maybe I have been assembled in a way that isn't conducive to me operating from aligned abundance, that it isn't conducive to a way that I can be the wholehearted version of who I was created to be. Yes, I can still look at other people and say, yeah, it'd be really cool to have that and to do that and to do those things. But that's not that's not the underbelly of the structure, the core structure of who you are. And so for anyone that is listening, that maybe you're feeling like you're broken, maybe you're not. Like, what if you're not actually broken? What if what needs to happen is you need to get your eyes on who you want to become, who God has said that you are, and not just accept it. That was a big thing that I learned. There's a big difference in accepting what God says about us and believing it. There is a huge difference, right? And when you start to believe it, which is very painful and very difficult, because everything inside of you is going to call yourself a liar. Because you're not going to be able to look in the mirror and say, I'm an incredible father, I'm an incredible mother, I'm an incredible leader. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to think you're a liar. You're going to think you're a liar when you say, I'm worthy, I'm loved, I'm safe, I'm secure, because you're not going to feel that way. But when you practice these things called affirmations or declarations in alignment with what God has spoken of us, you start to realize maybe I'm not broken. Maybe my perspective is a little skewed. And maybe this thing that I've constructed and assembled, all that I need to do is I just need to do a little disassembly, and I need to look at my life and all these other pieces that are here, and I can just start to construct and assemble whatever I want.
Yeah.
Right?
Even in your 60s, just so everybody know.
Come on. That's right.
Yeah.
So it can happen at any time. Everybody is reconstructible at any time.
Yeah.
And in Haggai, one of my favorite passages in Haggai is, my latter years are better than my former years.
Come on.
And I always add on, my latter years are better than my former years, because now Michael and I are doing it hand in hand with Papa God.
Come on.
Like, oh my gosh, how long has that taken?
And you get to apply the wisdom that life has taught you, using the Lego blocks. Vision you've got there, these blocks are laying there. Well, when you're younger, you don't even know what those blocks represent. You're just
no
kind of
idea.
grabbing them going, I saw that person's Lego building. Well, that block looks pretty good. I'll grab it and put it on mine. And as life goes on and you gain wisdom and you do realize, well, I need to reconstruct this whole thing, that now you look at that block and go, I know what that block is. I understand that block. And yes, I want that one in my building. I want that in my foundation. I want that in my integrity and who I am and my vision for who I want to be.
Yeah.
Now I know, yes, that's the block I want. I can grab that. And then the one that's there, you look at and go, I don't want that in my building. Get that one out of there, and kind of, I don't know, maybe sell it off or something.
Or flush it down the toilet.
Yeah.
You made a observation though, Michael, is that especially early on, and I honor you for the wisdom that you guys have, because it's something I haven't fully acquired yet. You guys have got a couple decades on me, and I need to listen to you and all your wisdom.
To God be the glory.
But with those Lego pieces, if we think about our lives, our tendency is to grab the things that are the shiny objects, the things that look different from everything else. But Michael, what you just said, I don't want to miss that. This was just something that just came to me while you're saying that. And this is, I think, incredibly powerful, is that if you're going to have a strong foundation, you're going to pick the boring rectangle blocks that are the most secure. They're the integrity, the responsibility, the accountability, the faithfulness, the love, the joy, the peace, the fruits of the Spirit. Those have to be the foundation if you're going to build a massive structure or a secure structure. But what most of us have done is like, oh, look at this shiny looking saucer piece over here that has like, or look at this one that's got this weird, that's where we get caught up in. It's like, oh, if I can only have this job or this spouse or this amount of kids, the white picket fence and all the stuff, I can have the money and the cars, and we start to build our foundation, right? And it's like what Jesus talked about on sand. Instead of the solid rock, which is those things which are faith, hope, and love, the fruits of the Spirit, and operating from that place. But the thing that's hard about those is that they're the most boring blocks there are. Right? They're not snazzy. They're not fancy. They don't have any like newfangled stuff. They're just like these square, rectangular, solid pieces, but you can stack something on that a mile high.
Yes.
Because it's such a secure foundation. I love that. Thank you for that awareness, Michael. That just literally, as you were talking, I was like, that's brilliant.
And I just want to emphasize, bold, and highlight that can happen even in your 60s.
Yeah.
Come on.
70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, hey, Isabel and I will be adding those blocks for the rest of our life, because you change as life goes on, things changes, new things happen. You're in new seasons we're all constantly in new seasons of life. And if we use that same structure in this season and then the next season, it might not be working now anymore. And we need to reevaluate, well, where am I at in this season? And is this all fit for this season? Because, where we're at, being in our 60s with children in our 20s, is not the season you're in.
No.
So yes, the foundation needs to be there, but now the blocks on top are going to be totally different.
Yeah.
So again, we can't be looking at, where's David's foundation? Look at that. Oh, that looks good. And try to apply it to ours. Hell, that's not going to work. We're in different seasons of life.
Right.
Well, I think what wisdom gives you guys, the advantage that you have that someone like me doesn't necessarily have yet, is that if I go in and do the work, I'm working piece by piece. Now, you guys can work piece by piece, but what I think reason wisdom gives an advantage is, instead of just working piece by piece, you have the ability to remove entire chunks of pieces or add entire chunks of pieces. That because of your history in your life, there are certain parts that have been constructed and maybe set aside, right? Because of pain or baggage or trauma or difficulty or things happening. But when you go to start the reassembly process, wisdom allows you to pick up that chunk of pieces and to reassemble it in a much more rapid fashion than someone that is in their 30s or even younger, right? Because we're going piece by piece, because we don't have that wisdom yet. We have it in certain areas, but you guys have lived such beautiful lives, and you've been through more than I can understand or imagine, which is why you have an advantage, because that process of redefining, of realigning, of saying, okay, this is who I want to become. I feel like, again, you guys have like it's a secret weapon that you only get if you're older.
I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you for speaking into us. That's beautiful.
I'll take that blessing.
And speaking of secret weapons, thank you. That was very beautiful. And I will not start crying. I just want to ask you, David, before we land this beautiful plane that I could just keep on flying with you and Michael in and talking forever and ever, but I know we all have things we need to do today. I just wanted to ask you, could you let our listeners have 3 action steps that they can take away to start implementing in their life, to move forward and up as you teach us?
Yeah. So the first, I would say, a very practical action step is get a piece of paper and write down on the left-hand side anything and everything that you're dissatisfied with in your life. Okay. You just write down on the left-hand side anything and everything you're dissatisfied with. And on the right-hand side of the page, now this is going to be a little challenging for some people, write what you want instead. And if you don't know what you want instead, just write the opposite of what you wrote on the left-hand side. Now, the opposite isn't necessarily going to be exactly what you do want, but it will help open the door to discovering what you really want. Because you walk down the road, I mean, if I was to fly down to New Zealand and we were to walk down the main street, we could ask 100 people what they want, and 99 of them would tell you what they don't want.
Yes.
They wouldn't be able to tell you what they want, because everyone is focused on the problems, frustrations. Well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And when they do say things that they want, it's not specific, it's not measurable, it's not attainable, relevant, time-based, it's not a SMART goal. They said, well, if I could just have $1 million, all my problems would go away. I'm like, well, respectfully, that's probably why you're never going to have $1 million. Because you can't just wishful think these things.
No.
You have to be very intentional to say, okay, this is why I want whatever it is. And so when you start doing this process of saying, here's where I'm dissatisfied in my health. I'm dissatisfied with my nutrition. I'm dissatisfied in my relationship. I'm dissatisfied as a parent. I'm dissatisfied in my job. It doesn't mean that you do anything with it. It's just acknowledging what is tearing up, causing the chaos of the head and the heart. Because we think these things, but for some reason we don't ever write them down. Scripture is very clear: write the vision and make it plain. So write down what's going on and then start to vision cast what could be possible by either leaning into the opposite or defining what you want instead. So that's a very practical exercise. Another one is defining your perfect day. If you take 20 minutes, and this is, I know it's going to sound a little crazy. I had a mentor of mine that had me do this about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. She had me write out my perfect day. And this has to include work, family, hobbies, everything. What would be your perfect normal day? You can't just say, I would go fly to Disney World and spend the whole day there. You can't do that. But what would your normal working day, from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, in 15-minute chunks, write down every single thing that you would want to do. Again, involving work, involving play, involving family and meals and everything. Get as specific as you want. Write that down. And what will happen is when you write it down, you're going to look at it and laugh and be like, nobody has this kind of lifestyle. Like, nobody has a day like this. That's what I did. And 2 years later, I found that journal entry while I was sitting in my living room at lunchtime. My kids were playing on the floor. And I started weeping because I realized that I was living my perfect day. And it had become a part of my life. I now have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my wife and kids every single day. I have the opportunity to speak and travel. I get to consult, I get to coach, I get to write, I get to do the things that I love. I get to hunt and fish and drink coffee and read nonfiction. And my life, I'm so incredibly grateful for. And I thank God for all of it. And it's only because of his strength and his power in me. But I realized that because of my intentionality to define what I really wanted, it caused me to start thinking differently and have a different perspective about life. And I started unconsciously, not even realizing it, taking actions to manifest or create that reality. Fast forward 2 years after doing that, and I was living it. And I couldn't believe, I started crying at lunchtime because I was like, I'm sitting here reading what I didn't think was even possible. Right. And so that's number 2, is to define your perfect day. And even if you laugh at it, even if you think it's completely absurd, right? It's not. Number 3, what I would say is really give yourself 30 days. If anyone wants an extended challenge, 30 days. If you don't know who you are, or you're struggling with identity, you're struggling with purpose, you're struggling with, fulfillment or finding your calling or what you're supposed to do. Let me give a quick little aside before I give the exercise.
Okay.
Purpose is something that I think most of society has been hoodwinked over, especially there's a lot of people in Christianity as well that have bought into this idea of calling, right? God's calling. Now, understandably, there are some scriptures that talk about the callings of God being irrevocable and things like that. However, the definition, the way that we look at it is like, I got to find what God put me here for. What's my calling, God? What's my purpose? And I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jesus-loving Christians over the years who have been living in anxiety and depression and dealing with suicidal ideation and just overwhelmed because they're desperately praying every single day, God, what am I supposed to do? Reveal my calling. What is my purpose? And when I was praying, and I was asking God this question because I was always frustrated by everyone else that seemed to have it all figured out. It's like, oh, I'm going to go do this and go do this. And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just love people. That's about it. That's all I know how to do. And there were three examples that popped up, and I felt like it was the Lord. I don't know if it was, or maybe, we'll go with it if it really felt right. But I heard, what's the purpose of taking a shower? Let me ask you, Michael and Isabel, what's the purpose of taking a shower?
Get clean.
Okay. What's the purpose of driving a car?
To get from point A to point B.
Okay. What's the purpose of eating dinner?
To nourish yourself.
Okay.
Hey,
So
Nourish yourself.
what's really interesting is that if we look at it, almost any other context, the word purpose is nothing more than an action to be taken to get a result.
Right. A verb. Yeah.
The shower is for cleanliness. The food is for nourishment, right? The driving the car is to get to where you want to go. And so we've been looking for purpose and calling and all these things, when really, if you define the outcome, you define who you want to become, the life that you want to live, and who you want to be, and you start operating in that place. Again, what you need to do gets crystal clear. However, the most powerful thing happens in this process. Now, every single thing you do, every single thing you think, that you believe, that you decide, your relationships, your network, your job, everything, if it does not come into alignment with that, it's an easy no.
Right.
But when it is in alignment with it, right, there is purpose in it, because it is helping you to become who you said you'd be. And so if you're looking for purpose or for calling in your life, the way to create purpose and meaning every single day is to define the outcome first. And so here's what we do. For 30 days, 5 minutes, you sit down and you shut your eyes, you shut up and you listen. You get quiet, you still yourself, you focus on the Father. You allow flow, what bubbles up. The Old Testament word for prophecy, one of the interpretations, means to bubble up. So you have stillness, vision, you look, spontaneity, what bubbles up, and you flow. You write it out. And I want you to ask one question. God, how do you see me? You do that for 30 days, and I promise you, you will never be the same. You will never be the same. And you will, I'm not saying you won't have ups and downs. I'm not saying you might, lose the path along the way. I'm not saying that you might deal with some depressive bouts or anxiety, but when you come out of that, when we talk about this security in your identity and knowing who you are and walking forward in confidence, there is nothing like it that I've ever experienced. And unfortunately, most people won't do it because it's a commitment, right? Mm. But if you really, really, really want to become secure in who you are, and you don't want to be bound to the outcomes and what everyone else says and everyone else thinks and all the stuff that's going on in the world, what it really does is it brings you to a place where you say, you know what? Everything outside does not have to be okay for me to be okay. And that's unfortunately where most people have made the biggest mistake of their lives. They say, once everything out there is okay, I'll be okay. Mm. But bring yourself to that place when you start to see yourself the way the Father sees you. You can say, man, I can be okay no matter what's going on outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Ultimate peace.
Yeah.
Ultimate peace passes all understanding, and it will guard your heart. It will guard your mind, and it is beautiful.
And so much mercy.
Yeah. David, I'm just going to take a deep breath. Yes, everyone. I'm sure all the listeners are like, ooh,
whoa, where did we just go?
We were just out there. Love it. Yes. Well, David, in the next couple minutes, would you please let everyone know how they can find you, where they can find you, anything you want to promote, let people know about? We'll make sure it's in the show notes, but the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. Anyone can find me on social media at David Waldy. You can literally go on any social media platform, type in at David Waldy. If you really want to connect with me, though, Instagram is the best. And if you reference the podcast, of course, then I'll know that you came from Isabel and Michael. And but you can also check out my website. It's weird now. I can say this and it still feels weird, but I'm like, you can Google me and you'll find me pretty easily, which is kind of cool. But outside of that, I do have something I'd love to bless everyone with. It's free, 100% free, but it's called the Fierce Empathy Framework. And so this is really useful, even if you are, there's two forms to it. One is a self-coaching framework. So it's called the Fierce Empathy Self-Coaching Framework. And the other one is just the Fierce Empathy Framework for coaches, consultants, and trainers. And what either of those are, if you want to get the self-coaching one, it's a really powerful way to answer a lot of the questions that we've been working through even in our conversation today. And it gives a systematic step-by-step process for how to establish, okay, what are the foundations? Where am I? Like, how can I look up and come to terms with reality of where I'm at, the decisions I've made, what I'm failing to control that I should be controlling, and what I'm trying to control that I was never meant to control. And it works through FIERCE is actually an acronym. So the foundations, and you go into intentions and goal setting, and you go into expectations and boundaries and how to create the boundaries necessary. We have relevancy, then the constructs, the belief systems that we have, and then escalation, which is helping you take your life to the next level. And so it's 100% free, but if you go to fierceempathyframework.com, so just fierceempathyframework.com, there's a button, you can download it for free. And I would love to know if anyone does, if they find it useful, make sure you let me know, because I love to support you and cheer you on your journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners. We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes. Details will be there. And David, what an amazing, beautiful conversation today. We learned a lot about building our Lego building today with fierce empathy. But yeah, your wisdom abounds, and thank you so much for sharing with our listeners. Anything you want to add, hon?
No, just we love you.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
thank you, both of you, for honoring me, for sharing your platform and allowing me to be here. And it's truly an honor, and I'm very grateful for the time we shared.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today on the MD and Chef Team Show. We've been with David Waldy today. I'm sure you're going to find this interview has been so impactful in your life. You might want to re-listen to it a few times and take some notes, because there is so many fantastic nuggets in there.
I definitely will.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know it.
Me too.
Get notes as fast as I could.
Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. And God bless you. And we'll see you again on the next show.
And remain unstoppable.
Bye for now.
Love you. Bye-bye.